Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. Sports talk where your voice counts. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is the Steve Jones Show on a Wednesday, hump day already on the short holiday week here on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Matt Catrillo here with you. Steve will soon be there from the Sunbury Motors studio. Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. And online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Lincoln, Kia, Hyundai, all new pre-owned inventory. All at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Boy, did we have a lot to get into today. That's really just come about the last couple hours. First of all, with Coach K retiring at the conclusion of this season, multiple reports have come out, that was about 2 hours ago, and looks like associate head coach John Shire is going to be the successor in the short order. So Coach K retiring at the end of next season. That is the big story of the day, biggest of the day. And now, of course, we all know he's already a Hall of Famer. We know all of his accomplishments that he's got, and first coach to get to 1,000 career wins, 5 national titles, and all the like. But, and he'll always have that, and he's definitely one of the people on Mount Rushmore for college hoops. There's no question. There's no questions answered. And I think I really liked him as a coach. I liked him as a person. The way he worked with recruits, brought people in, worked with students, recognizing that they're student athletes and things like that. It's great. But I do wonder, though, considering his attitude at times during the season this past year with dealing with the pandemic and everything during the year. He even mentioned in the midst of a bad season for Duke, he even said himself, maybe we shouldn't be playing at all. And I said at the time, how convenient. And I wonder the same thing here with this retirement. There's a couple other things starting to come out. People are speculating, well, it's because of everything happening with the transfer portal now and how out of control that has gotten. And it's starting to phase out old-time coaches. Of course, Roy Williams retired a few months ago. So the era in basketball and college hoops is definitely changing, no doubt about that. And then there's and also with the name, image, and likeness that's right around the corner here and changing, which I don't really understand that point because Mike Krzyzewski has always been for name, image, and likeness, so I didn't really get that take. But if you want to talk about the transfer portal, I can definitely see that because it's already a grueling process to bring just players to get in and committed, then to have to re-recruit them while they're there. That's a lot, and he's getting up there. So I can understand it from that standpoint. So it's really a fascinating situation as to why now for Coach K to retire. But he is retiring nonetheless at the end of next season. And Fox Sports' Tim Brando is going to join us at 4:06 with his reaction to that. So we look forward to having Tim back on with us. It's been a while since he's rejoined us here on the Steve Jones Show. So we look forward to bringing him on at 4:06 today. Nate Bauer, too, from Blue White Illustrated, is also going to join us today. He had some interesting takes on why now for Beaver Stadium to going back to full capacity and the rest of the Penn State athletics. He's had some very interesting comments about that, so I look forward to that. I believe he's joining us at 3:35 today. Now, other piece of news that also came through today is Joel Embiid. We now know what the injury is for the Sixers, and it's a meniscus tear in that right knee. And that is not what we all wanted to hear if you're a Sixer fan. Not at all. And, of course, he will not play tonight as the Sixers will try it again to close out the series with the Wizards, Game 5 tonight, in front of the full crowd at Wells Fargo Center for the first time since the pandemic started. So that's big for the Sixers. And I think they still will get it done tonight now that they know he's out. You can fully game plan around it now. Plus, you'll have the big home crowd. Sixers have been really good at home this year, with or without Joel Embiid. So I don't think it's an easy game. I wouldn't be surprised if it came down to the fourth quarter necessarily, but I think the Sixers will close it out tonight.
You're done. You're cooked. You're fried. Your team's gonna lose. Your team's gonna lose 3 more.
I'll start to hit the panic button if they lose tonight. How about that? Then I'll start hitting the panic button. But I think they'll still take care of business tonight.
Your baseball team just lost 3 games in a row to the Tigers. You got swept.
Well,
you got swept by a team that doesn't have a single guy that would start for you.
Listen, they are a whole new different story, the Yankees right now. At least they finally got the dub last night, thanks to Clint Frazier. But, yeah, they're a whole different story right now. But at least I can laugh at the Celtics where they're at right now. I didn't even touch on them yet.
The Celtics, well, it doesn't help when Jaylen Brown is out. You're talking about one of your top players. But, they were not going to win in that series. Brad Stevens will take over in the front office. It's interesting with Mike Krzyzewski retiring today. He'll retire at the end of the season. Mike will be 75, by the way, when he does step aside. But Brad Stevens, I'm telling you right now, the bubble did a number on a lot of people. It really did. The bubble did a number on a lot of people. All the protocols and everything that everybody had to go through. Matt, it was not easy for anybody to handle it. And that includes Mike Krzyzewski. That includes Brad Stevens. I mean, Stevens cited the bubble as like one of those, it just sucked the joy out of the job. Completely.
That is certainly
now he's
understandable.
Try something in the front office. And that's across the board. You're finding that with so many people. And and Mike Krzyzewski, at one point, Mike Krzyzewski even questioned playing the season, if you remember.
Yes. I still
think it has a lot to do with it.
I still think when he said those comments, I think it was more out of I think some of the frustration of Duke's particular season had something to do with it. But now you mention that, I could buy that.
I think it has. I think it's to be thought about, because look, why didn't Penn State play in a bowl game last year? They could have, because at that point, after playing 9 straight weeks and doing all that, they had enough. They had enough, and I don't think people realize just how hard it was. There was just so little joy in it. I have to admit today now, I had a Caddyshack Bishop moment.
Oh, no. Was this on the golf course earlier today?
Yes, two of my grandsons, because the Spikes don't play. The Spikes are playing at Williamsport tonight, so I'm not doing the game tonight. Okay. So I've been at the ballpark the last 5 nights. All right. Tremendous. Enjoy it, the whole thing. Well, it turns out that, this is the night I've got off. And ironically, 2 of my grandsons are playing Little League tonight. One's playing T-ball and one's playing kid pitch 9-10. All right? So I want to make sure I get out to see at least one at-bat of the T-baller and then a couple of at-bats of the older one. And because I don't have a game tonight, I do tomorrow night. Yeah, I thought, let's get out and play golf this morning. Okay. So I did all my update stuff on the spikes that I'll need for tomorrow. So I go out to the golf course. I start, and Matt, it really is a really nice morning to play. It was like 68, 69. It was a little humid out there. No big deal. It was like really comfortable. I'm having a good time. And I will, just so for reference, I started on 7. So when I say I got to 15, I had not played 15 holes. Okay, at that point. So 15 would have been my 9th hole, I think. Right. And so I get there, and it starts to rain. Like, okay. I'm like, it's so what? No big deal. It's raining. Who cares? Right? I mean, just a little gentle shower. I get on the green, boom, couple putts, we're done. Okay, I go to 16, and I'm playing the white course. So I'm playing the par 3, and it starts to rain a little bit more. All right, so I hit a 7-iron just left of the green. I'm like, all right, hit a lob wedge onto the green, 2 putts. All right, now it's starting to come down more. I'm like, all right. And it was really starting to come down more, and I get to 17. And 17 at the white course, one of my favorite holes that I play. I don't care anywhere I play. I said, well, you know what? You're driving the ball better today than you have all season, which helps because I went to a friend of mine and said, look, what am I doing with my driver here? I think he wanted to burn it at one point. No, it's okay. All right, so I get up on 17, boom, and I whack a drive. I said, all right, just drive down, pick the ball up, go back to the parking lot, get out of here. Well, I get there, and I look at the shot, and I'm like, man, boy, I'm only like a sand wedge away. So I go ahead and hit another one. And it's really coming down. It's like the Bishop and Caddyshack. Right? So I hit the sand wedge. I'm like, oh, I'm 5 feet from the hole. Now it's really coming down. So I pull up to the side of the green, grab the putter, run down, sink the putt for birdie. It's really coming down. I'm stoked.
But at least you made birdie.
But it
That's
was
the most
worth it,
important
Matt.
part. Yes.
It was worth it.
I would have done the same thing.
It was worth it.
Yes.
It was worth it. I think I'm in the car going back saying to myself, you are an idiot. You should have just quit after the 15th hole. You should have. You, sir, I should have quit after the drive. Hero. And I had just one of those Bishop and Caddyshack moments where I felt like Bill Murray was next to me saying, I don't think the heavy stuff's coming down for a while. I'm sitting there going, you are a dope. But I did birdie.
You did. There you go.
May have been a total dope doing it, but I did. I birdied it. Oh, man. All right, we'll take a break. Brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com and News Radio 1070 WKOK. When it comes to car buying, there's the other guy's way, and then there's the SMC way. The other guys force you into a vehicle you really don't want. The Sunbury Motors way lets you take the time you need to browse, ask questions, and take the test drive and think on it. For over 100 years, the Mertz family and all their employees have made your experience the most pleasant one you'll ever have. The other guys won't offer you the best price for your trade, no matter how much they say they will. The SMC way is their promise to provide you with the most money the market shows your vehicle is worth. The SMC way is to offer you all applicable factory rebates on new vehicles and generous discounts. Looking for a pre-owned vehicle? The SMC way checks each vehicle in a 200-mile radius to determine the lowest price, then beat it. It's the lowest price promise, just part of the SMC way. The choice is up to you, the other guy's way or the SMC way. The SMC way wins every time. Sunbury Motors Company in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury, and at sunburymotors.com. Selling more cars and satisfying more customers for over 100 years.
All right, off the inbounds, and that is it. This one is over, and Duke beats St. John's 77-68, and Madison Square Garden and a nationwide radio and television audience has been privileged to witness another monumental sporting event here this afternoon. Mike Krzyzewski has accomplished something that no other NCAA Division I coach ever has. He just capped off the 1,000th victory in an already monumental coaching career.
Is that Bob Harris?
I believe that was.
He's no longer the play-by-play guy. Yeah, Bob Harris was the legendary play-by-play voice of Duke football and basketball. You know, it's interesting. Bob Harris broadcast Duke football, basketball. Woody Durham broadcast North Carolina football, basketball. They grew up best friends. How about that?
I didn't know that.
Kind of a marvelous deal. And they would have putted for birdie, too, if they had an opportunity in a driving rainstorm, I guarantee you. Get back in the cart, and I think to myself, you stubborn. You are so stubborn. Oh, my goodness. Wow. Yeah, Mike Krzyzewski will retire at the end of this season. And we will talk with Tim Brando about that at 4:06. So he'll be 75 when he does retire. 5 national titles. You know, it's interesting. Mike Krzyzewski is. If Mike Krzyzewski had the beginning of his career in today's environment, I don't know if he would have survived. You look at Duke's record, and what really changed it around for him was getting Mark Gallery, Jay Billis, Johnny Dawkins, and then out of Philly got Gene Banks. And that really formed the foundation of his first great team, but also formed the foundation of his culture. 10 years ago this month, Mike Krzyzewski came here to Penn State to Eisenhower Auditorium, and he and Joe Paterno were up on stage with Reese Davis. And Reese Davis, by the way, did a phenomenal job with them. And I remember, you know, in discussion afterward, Jay Billis was part of the discussion. You know, I said, geez. I said, Jay, I didn't realize Mike was that funny. And he looked at me, he says, you know, funny thing, Steve, I was going to say the same thing about Joe. I didn't realize Joe was that funny. Joe had a phenomenal sense of humor. Joe was so funny. But Mike Krzyzewski, but they talked about leadership. And something he talked about, one of the more enjoyable experiences he had as a coach, was when Shane Battier was on the team. Because Battier would take care of everything within the locker room. And Mike Krzyzewski said, my attitude always was I could now really coach because I knew Shane would take care of it. Just like when Joe talked about like Mike Reed, Steve Smear, he knew that they would take care of the Penn State locker room, which Joe then related as well. But you learn so much from those who have been around the block, and I found that to be a fascinating couple of hours. Sitting there that day, listening to these two. And that's why you see what James Franklin does with Penn State football. He's got that leadership council because he wants that same thing where you don't have to babysit every section of your program. You have people who are leaders who can take care of it.
Taking your calls at 800-795-9565. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now, from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Sixers could be the first team ever in the NBA to lose 4 straight after winning the opening 3. You would just be insane at that point.
You know what? That would just about sum up their luck.
When
it comes to trying to take that next step towards a championship.
You would just be insane. All right. Boy, that would make the show fun. All right, so...
Gee, thanks.
I don't want you to feel like you're a prop. All right. Great to have you with us today. Brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors, Kierwood's 11 and 15 Hummel's Wharf. Online at sunburymotors.com. Let's now go to, I'm going to assume it's the 11th fairway. Nate Bauer, Blue White Illustrated. Sir, welcome. Great to have you with us.
Waiting out the rain? Maybe. No. I'm sitting on my couch. Today's not the day. It's not the right time. But we'll get there. We'll get back.
I understand. Nate, yesterday was I think we all expected it that they would go to one. It was just a matter of which date they were going to announce it. The 100%. Let's it's great for the fans, the tailgating, everything. But let's get to brass tacks of this. How important is it for Penn State's athletic department? Financially, they got back to 100% at venues.
Hold on. Somebody got mad at me on my message board because I made that exact point, and I guess it rubs people the wrong way to say that this is purely a financial decision. Obviously, it's not a purely financial decision. But, yeah, like it could not happen otherwise, right? There were no other options for Penn State athletics, for the university, and frankly, for this entire community.
For State College. Yep.
State College. This place needs football, and there can be arguments and discussions about where it fits in terms of our cultural priorities. I'm fine with having those. But to deny what it means to have Penn State football packing the house on Saturdays in the fall is lunacy. It's just it's a detachment from reality. Well, and so it's huge. Obviously, not sure what you saw last night of Sandy Barber on the coach's caravan, but her first word was finally, right? Like they've known. This has not been a secret internally that things were going to head this direction. Obviously, the governor's office has made that intent clear, but they wanted to have all their I's dotted and T's crossed and make sure everything was exactly the way it needs to be before they made the announcement. But this is what had to happen, no question.
Well, I've always been about the big picture of this. Obviously I think about football and men's basketball because those are the two sports obviously I announce. So obviously there's a direct attachment for me to each one. So that's critical. But I'm always thinking about the other 702 student athletes besides the 98 in football and basketball that are on scholarship. There's 702 other student athletes who rely on this revenue to have their opportunity. And that's how I look at it. Nate, do you see it the same way?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I did think that, we're going inside baseball here, but one of it was curious to me that the university released a press release last week, either Thursday or Friday, about the self-sustaining nature of the athletic department for fiscal year 2020.
Right.
Because that's not the one that matters, right?
Right. That's the one that went to June 30th to 2020, not the one that's going to come out this year.
Correct. And so that number is important. It's positive for Penn State that they ran a revenue surplus. All of that stuff is good. But, and as Sandy acknowledged last night, there's going to be a deficit this year, right? They lost out on some tournament revenue at the onset of the pandemic, but a lot of that stuff was already in the books. They knew where they were going to come out for fiscal year 2020. 21, however, from July until this July, is going to be a different story. There were expense decreases, right, concurrent to revenue decreases. You weren't able to get ticket revenue, but they still got the TV money. But at the same time, you were spending less on recruiting expenses, travel expenses, all of those kinds of things. But as she said last night, they're still expecting to have an $18 to $20 million deficit for this past year. But as you're saying, and to your point, that is critical to be $18 to $20 million instead of $50 to $75 million, which is what it could have been and might have been if things had continued. So, yeah, they'll it's fine. It's going to be fine. But a huge part of that process of it being fine is what the announcement was yesterday.
I realize Ryan Snyder's the one that locks in on what I'm about to talk about here, but there's also a time management question that's involved here, because the dead period ended obviously this week. It ended yesterday. In terms of time management between camps and evaluations, when you've talked to some of the people up there, what have they told you about what it's going to take time management-wise to negotiate and make June successful?
Yeah, I mean, it's the opposite of last year, right? They got to figure it out, and they know. I mean, it's going to be hair on fire for a month. It's funny. I was delivering coffee to my wife yesterday, and I drove by the stadium.
Great! This is one of those great saint moments where all of a sudden every husband out there feels 2 inches tall. Okay, I got it.
This trust me, she can confirm this does not happen very often. But you know what? I didn't make the coffee in the morning. I owed her, and so I drove by the stadium. And driving by the stadium, look. 10 o'clock on a Tuesday in June, you don't really expect the stadium sound system to be blaring. And for, right?
And the scoreboard lit up.
Scoreboard all lit up, right? And I texted Ryan and said, hey, man, just FYI, they must be hosting people at the stadium. And he was like, yeah, dude, obviously, you idiot. This is the way it is for the next 30 days, right? They are going to be full bore, full go. It is recruiting, getting guys on campus, and making up for lost time in a lot of situations.
Yeah, it will be. I mean, there's no question about it. How'd you look at the spring, Nate? I mean, in the end, you got a chance to watch a couple of the practices. So, I mean, what do you think in terms of their placement of where they are right now to set a foundation for what they need to do in the preseason?
Yeah, I mean, it's just so much better than a year ago. I mean, I just, hindsight obviously changes things a little bit. But as I reflect on last year, my main takeaway is how hard it was to take anything really seriously in terms of what happened, right? 0-5 and the offensive struggles and all that stuff. I viewed all of it through the lens of how could it be any different? Okay, maybe they win some of those games, right? Maybe they go 2-3 or 3-2 and things shake out at Indiana a little bit differently. But it wasn't a real season. And it's not a real season because not of the games they played, but because the 6 or 7 months leading into it were so abnormal. And even once they got into it, it was so abnormal. It's just not fair to expect a seamless transition or a seamless process to your goals if you cannot work towards them. And the bottom line last spring and last summer is that Penn State football was kneecapped in its ability to do those things from a variety of perspectives, more so than competitors who had the opportunity to have springs.
Including Indiana, by the way. Indiana was actually, yes, people don't realize Indiana had, not all, but had a pretty good chunk of spring practice. So did Ohio State. Those are the first 2 games Penn State played.
So did Northwestern, who happened to have a very successful season.
Maryland actually had some. Yep.
So these were things that if you're paying attention, you see, and those were all critical things. And so for me, if I'm evaluating this spring, it's not about the 15 practices that they had. It's about the next 3 months, right?
Yeah.
Spring practice is about, yes, figuring some things out from a coaching perspective, but it's also about giving your players the tools with which to work themselves. And so that's the whole thing. You gotta put your guys in a position where they can maximize every rep that they have over the summer. And guess what? They finally had that. They finally got that opportunity this spring. Does that mean that everything's going to be perfect? No. They still have issues to resolve, and there are still things that need to be shored up. But they're going to be so much better prepared going into this season than they were last year.
Let me give everyone just a simple guide as to the normal, how abnormal last year was. Just look at the weights of the players.
Yep.
Right? They put out, how many times? 3, 4 different rosters with weights on them last year? That sound right? So you have certain, weights came out and the roster after they were done with the winter workouts. And they did, by the way, finish all their winter workouts a year ago. And then all of a sudden you got the summer numbers, and you're like, there are a lot of guys that lost a lot of weight.
Uh-huh.
Remember that?
Yep.
Now you have to build that back up while then trying to get ready for a season. So, I mean, just something as simple as that should tell you how different it was. Just the simplicity of it.
I had an interview with Dwight Galt, right? Strength coach, maybe, I don't know, let's say a month into the shutdown.
Yeah. And
Dwight, who is an effervescent, highly motivated.
Yep.
He's a light, right? Like he's got a shining presence. Man, I sound ridiculous.
But
but
you know
true.
what? But see, the difference is we know him, and that is how he is. I mean, he is a hardworking, focused but positive individual.
And the point is, he was as depressed.
Yeah.
And there was nothing he could do, right? And so that was the whole tenor of that interview was, I don't know what we're going to do, right? Some of these guys, you don't understand, right? Like, they don't have access to equipment. They don't have access to anything. They're talking about going to Lowe's and buying 50-pound bags of sand so that some of these guys have anything to work with and to work out with. This is elite, high-level training, right? With elite, high-level facilities that you need to be able to do this on a day-by-day, hour-by-hour process. And to not have any of that at your disposal, it blows it all up. It was not possible to do those things that you need to do, in those regards, and he knew it. He knew it, and that's how it played out.
Right. I don't know how much or how often you had a chance to at least converse with Sean Clifford during the course of the spring. Now, obviously, you had a chance to talk with Mike probably, too, at some point. Mike Yurcich, I'm referring to. I got the sense in my conversations with him, he's look, there's work to be done. Mike will be the first to tell you, hey, this isn't where we want it to be. I don't expect it to be where he wants it to be in the spring. Right?
Yep.
But I sense Sean Clifford felt he was in a really good place. What did you think?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure what else Sean can say, but I do think that there's a little Mike Gesicki going on here, right? Where you have a little bit of success and things don't go the way that you plan, right? The year after that. And so Sean, again, like I hate playing psychologist. We don't know these guys the way that obviously their friends and family and coaches and those kind of people know them. But Sean had some level of growing up to do, right? And that's easy for me to say. All right, I still haven't grown up. I'm Peter Pan. But Sean, the way he dealt with things, the way he responded to things, I think that last year, obviously the end of the 2019 season, were eye-opening to him. He hadn't experienced that before. He had not had, he had not endured those kinds of reactions and frustrations, and criticisms, frankly, right? And so to have the experience that he had last year and to come out of it with some of the success that he did down the stretch, to get some of that mojo back, to have a new offensive coordinator, that they're all steps toward erasing the bad, right? Towards being able to pivot and I don't know what the high end is there. Like, I don't know what the ceiling is, but I know, and I think what some of his comments reflected this spring were that day at a time. And if you're moving in the right direction, that's all you ask for, is take the steps that you can take without taking steps back. And so I think that this spring presented that opportunity for him. I think that Mike Yurcich provides a clean slate. I think there's excitement there, but he's got to do it. He's got to do it, and he's got to do it in accordance with some other elements last year that were not there, that didn't get the pub that they should have. The offensive line wasn't as good as it needed to be, and that dictated quite a bit of how he performed at the beginning of the season, right? And that's, again, that's not a knock on Phil Trautwein. It was the conditions. It was what they had to deal with.
Absolutely, yep.
But that impacted Sean's performance, and it kind of spiraled from there. Well, guess what? You got a clean slate. You get to work on it. You get to work with them. Restrictions are done. COVID's over. Hallelujah. Let's go.
Well, in fact, that will be my last question to you, Nate, because, you mentioned your wife earlier. You brought her coffee, which is great. But also it's what she does, I'm sure, helped shape how you felt about the pandemic. I think that'd be fair, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. No, so my wife's a physician.
Yeah, absolutely. So in that, in the last couple of days at the ballpark with the Spikes, I have found a lack of tension. I mean, I sense tension for the last year plus. Everywhere you turn. I mean, just going to the grocery store to go over and go, hey, I'd like to pick up some cantaloupe and a couple of muffins. Okay, just stay away. Have you sensed, now with this move to 100%, obviously, have you sensed the same thing, that there's that lack of tension is now gone and people want to let loose?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. Look, yes, I get the feedback from our Blue White Illustrated community. I can tell you for myself that the in the context of sports in particular, the experience and the feeling last year were horrible, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you sensed it too. And it was things that I didn't appreciate. But walking into the stadium last year for the Ohio State game at night and driving right up to the parking lot and seeing no souls out there was horrible. It was awful. Mm-hmm. There was no novelty to it. It was depressing. And I don't think I knew how much I personally needed that return. Right? We got to get back together. Yeah. We got to be around each other.
Exactly.
We need it. It's our souls. It's got to happen. I sound like a traveling minister here, but it is integral to who we are and what this community is. And you get that step where, guess what? There are no legal restrictions here, and not only are there no legal restrictions here, but there's science behind it that says, hey guys, we can get back together. Yeah. We can start to do the things that we used to do and feel confident about it and less nervous. No anxiety that going to the ballpark is going to kill you.
Right.
That's huge.
Right. That's
absolutely.
Huge. Absolutely.
It's a major weight lifted, I think, from all of our psyches.
No question about it. My friend, it's always a pleasure. I enjoy every conversation we have. I appreciate it very much.
Hey, me too. Thank you for having me.
Nate Bauer, Blue White Illustrated. Great to have you with us today. Brought to you by Sunbury Motors. Here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.